Hi. Today we're
Hey,
talking with Douglas.
hey,
Hi,
Darryl.
hi, Doug. Douglas Lowe is a marketing man, I guess you could say. You're also an attorney and an MBA, but
That's right.
today we're talking about your really brilliant work in helping industries learn about what patients' experience is like, not just in prostate cancer, but throughout the whole disease spectrum, particularly around rare diseases. So,
Yes.
Doug, if you wouldn't mind just telling us what you do for a living.
Okay. Thanks for having me on, Darryl. So Find a Cure Panel, which is the name of my company, we specialize in patient research for rare and serious diseases. And our clients will ask us to find participants in all rare and serious disease categories. So our clients might come to us and say, okay, we're looking for 50 people with MS, 10 people with stage 4 bladder cancer, 20 people with prostate cancer. It's our role and responsibility to find the people. I just named three very well-known diseases, but of course, as I just suggested, there are 25,000 plus diseases. We recruit in every sector, regardless of how obscure it is. We've worked in populations of only 50 or 100 people. And we're giving patients an opportunity to step forward and share their opinions and experiences. It usually focuses on treatment, what their treatment experience has been, and what potentially their interest is in future treatment.
And you started your company about 20 years ago or so?
I started my company 16 years ago, but I've only focused on patients for maybe about 10 years.
Right. And about how many patients have gone through your hands?
Tens of thousands.
Yeah.
We've done hundreds of projects, and in oncology, we've done probably about 150 stage 4 projects. Most of oncology that we do is stage 4, with some exceptions. So in the major cancer groups, as you know, there are 300 different types of cancer, but in the larger, more common cancer groups, we've done lung cancer at least 10 times, probably about 15 times now. Breast cancer, metastatic breast cancer, over 10 times. Prostate cancer, like 5 or 6 times. Colon cancer, multiple times. And then in your leukemias and lymphomas, we've done AML 4 or 5 times, CML 3 or 4 times, CLL multiple times, et cetera. I would say at any given time in the last 5 to 7 years, we have at least one, but maybe multiple oncology projects that we're recruiting for at a given time.
And these projects, the nugget of these projects really is to help companies like pharmaceutical companies and marketing companies, et cetera, actually hear in real time what the patient experiences, what actual men and women, or men around prostate cancer and men and women around caregivers for prostate cancer are experiencing, and so that they could help build better marketing and better information programs.
Yes, I would say that's a good summary of it. There are different aspects of serious disease research. There's university research, there's NIH research, there's hospital insurance, there's hospital research, there's insurance research. But 95% of what we do is sponsored by companies that have treatments in that given sector. So in your sector, in prostate cancer, it's those companies that have treatments for prostate cancer, either on the market or coming on the market. They will hire a research company that hires Find a Cure Panel. So we have 2 levels of clients. We have the research client and then the sponsoring client. We have no interaction really with the sponsoring client. They hire the research company who hires Find a Cure Panel. In the US, there's maybe 100 research companies that specialize in healthcare. So our clients will come from one of those, our projects will come through one of those 100 companies.
How many companies in the US are like Find a Cure?
There are, depends how you define it. We have one major, I don't want to say competitor, but we have one other player in our space who focuses on serious and rare diseases. And then we have a number of other companies that will come into our space, but it's a small population of players. Depending on how you define it, I would say between, on the low end, 3 to the high end, like 10.
So actually, I imagined many, many more. You know, you can imagine I've been approached by about half a dozen or so.
Sure, but a lot of those companies that you might have been approached with don't necessarily specialize in rare diseases, and you may have been approached by the research companies directly. So a research, and remember, as I was saying, there are 100 research companies that specialize in healthcare that do patient work, but within the fielding and recruitment end of it, that's a small number of players.
Okay, so when you're asked to find patients, like I mean, you talk to people like me, heads of large nonprofits, medium size like Malecare, smaller ones like, you know, hundreds of smaller mom and pop types, with the hope that with the encouragement that we should publicize your call to action to connect patients to these research firms so that the patients can become subjects of the research that these firms are looking at.
Yes, that's an important part of our model, is certainly working with nonprofits, support groups, advocacy groups, key opinion leaders to get them to share the information. But we also have what we call a direct active model. So we will approach people directly in a very active way and encourage them to participate. And that might be through a number of different resources. However, they say that they have prostate cancer, we will try to approach them and introduce the research to them, encourage them to participate. If they're interested in participating, then getting their scheduling information, getting their preliminary information, making sure that they're on the call, and then deal with the incentives on the back end of it. So we're the only entity that the participants will deal with, other than when they get on the call and speak to the moderator. Of course, we do online research, quantitative research as well. So in that example, they won't have any interaction with anyone other than find a cure panel. And so we manage this whole recruitment part of it. I should back up and say, to add a little more detail, there are 3 levels of research. The first first phase is called design, and that's developed by the research client in conjunction with the sponsoring client. Find a Cure panel might have some input and response to the design of it. The client might say, oh, we need 75 people with prostate cancer, stage 4 prostate cancer. And we might say, no, we can't do 75, we can do 25 or 30. They might have 10 different qualifying elements, and we might say that's way too many. We need to reduce that and make this a little more pragmatic. But it's the research client that does the design. The second phase of research is fielding or data collection, and that's what we specialize in. And then the third phase is analysis. And again, that's the research client's responsibility. They do the analysis of the data collection or fielding, and then they present the report or summary to the sponsoring client.
So let's, I mean, in the next like 15 or 20 minutes, I want people to sort of understand what it is, what's going on, and to the best we can, help people to feel comfortable participating in this. And for those who have reasonable, you know, objections, to understand that their objections are valid and there's no harm done. Let's start at the top. Like, what are these guys, men and women, researching?
It will vary, but I would say, generally speaking, it will revolve around some type of campaign. So let's say, for example, the sponsoring client wants to revise their patient information, a brochure that they give to doctors who will give to the patients. And they want to, which is very important, source of information and resource. So they might say, okay, well, we're going to redesign this because we're not happy with it. We've had some negative feedback to it. And now we're going to present that redesign to the patients and get their input. And then most of the calls that we do, the participants need to be on computer or tablet. So in this example, they will be given a link into a digital room, similar to what we have here on Zoom, which is a emerging platform. There are certain platforms that are more specific to research. And on the call, the moderator will put in this example, the patient brochure into the digital room and ask for the patient and caregiver's perspective on this brochure. Is this clear to you? Does this resonate to you? What's important to you? What improvements do you think we can make? Do you prefer this language or that language? And they will lead the participants through the brochure, usually in a fairly scripted manner, but in all qualitative research, there's a certain amount of free form, obviously. And then after all the calls, let's say 30 calls, 30 different perspectives, they will generate a report and say, okay, well, here's the top level criticism and feedback that we received from the calls on the patient brochure. They then might integrate and insert that feedback and might do a second round of calls. So a fair amount of calls that we do or research that we do have two deliverables. So there might be a second call, or they might start with an online community and then do a follow-up call after they make the improvements from the first research phase of the research. So I would say that that's a very typical example. A patient brochure, it might be a website, it might be they might be doing a big campaign. They might be doing something with, video. They might have a new video campaign and they have 3 new advocates that are introducing their treatment. And they might have the patients and the caregivers provide feedback. Okay, well, which of these 3 advocates do you think has the most credibility? What did you like about what they were saying? What resonated with you? How much credibility did they have? So those would be, typical examples. If a product is coming onto the market for the first time, there's going to be a lot of research around that. And that's always exciting. And patients are always interested. Remember, we work in categories that there may never have been a treatment before. And here's the treatment. It's coming on the market. It's got FDA approval. It's going to be available in 3 months. And we're rolling out in a number of different categories, from patient brochures to websites to information that we give to doctors. So it's important for people to step up and share their opinions and experiences, because remember, the end clients, the sponsoring client, the one that has the treatment, they don't deal with patients really directly at all. They don't prescribe medicine. They don't have any one-to-one interaction with the patients. Obviously, doctors prescribe all the medicine and treatments, and so the interaction that patients have are with doctors. So this is an opportunity for patients and caregivers to speak directly to the sponsoring client, and potentially for the first time.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Do you get to see or learn of what the responses are? I mean, are you involved in that part of it at all?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Do you have, what I'm wondering is there much variance or variety of responses from different disease type people? I mean, I could imagine like a 20-year-old may react differently than a 60 or 70-year-old or something, just obvious distinctions. But like, would a 60-year-old prostate cancer guy react really dramatically differently than a 60-year-old lung cancer guy?
Well, potentially. I mean, it would vary, you know, depending on what their prognosis is. I mean, age is one factor, but the availability of treatment with their, you know, what their lifespan potentially is going to impact what their responses are. So, you know, if you're talking stage 4 cancer, you know, there's pretty large variance on what the prognosis is for people. So a friend of mine, for instance, has had stage 4 lymphoma, which is considered one of the more treatable cancers. You know, if you, I just wrapped up, or actually I'm still doing it, in fact, a stage 4 liver cancer project. I've done 2 rounds of it. As I was saying earlier, there's often multiple rounds to research, and starting in the 3rd phase of it. You know, if you've got a stage 4 GI cancer from pancreatic to stomach to liver, oftentimes you're diagnosed at stage 4 and you're already looking at the end game. And the average life expectancy of people with those diseases is less than a year. And oftentimes people don't last more than a couple of months. So, you know, it's going to vary significantly depending on the type of cancer. You know, but within prostate cancer, which is your category and your listeners are going to be most interested in, you know, there might be someone who's diagnosed at 52 versus 72, and their responses are going to be definitely different, and how they perceive their lives going forward was going to be very dramatically, potentially. And in the design of the research, that's going to be considered. The client might say, we won't take anyone under 50, because anyone under 50 is not going to be representative of the typical prostate cancer participant. They might also cap it and say, we don't want anyone over 75. And that's typical in research, because someone that's 80 is going to feel a lot differently than someone that's 50, and they don't want to skew the research by someone who's much older and has different perspective and philosophy going forward. So all of that is considered in the design. And at the end of the day, we look for representative people, because we're looking at a small group of people. You know, there are hundreds of thousands of people with prostate cancer, and we're only talking 20 people. So those 20 people are going to speak for hundreds of thousands of people, and it's a lot of responsibility for them. Yeah. And I think that the average participant really doesn't understand the gravity of the stakes of what they're participating in and how important it is. And that if they can make a positive impact, an example of the brochure, which is important, you know, hundreds of thousands of people might get that brochure, and they're just one of 20 people providing their feedback. So we encourage people to step forward. It's very easy to participate in our research. It's very structured, it's very processed. An average research project in prostate cancer is one phone call, 60 minutes, and it's easy to do. And I say, in all complete candor and honesty, 99.9% of the people that participate in our research are glad that they did it, found it easy to do, and had a positive experience. And we're really try to design everything that we do to make it smooth and easy for people. You know, there are different aspects of prostate cancer, and we recently just did one, as you know. We did a prostate cancer research project for Black men, which is extremely important because the incidence rate for prostate cancer among Black men is like 5 times higher than other categories. So we did a project of close to 20 people, specifically for Black men and a few caregivers. And that was very salient and powerful to give them a voice and make the research focus specifically on their perspectives. And I think it was extremely successful. And everyone who participated enjoyed doing it and understand the significance of it. We recently did that, I think, you know, in the last month or so. Diversity in research is extremely important. But to give you an example, in the prostate cancer project that I had done earlier in the year, I want to say March, we took at least 20 people. I think there was only one Black participant. So we wanted to rectify that. This was not related to that research, but there are initiatives like that that are very, very important.
So are you saying that unless you actually specify black men won't show up for research?
I don't know if I would define it that way. I would define it as it's difficult to get diversity in research. It's not specific to prostate cancer in any way, and it's not specific to Black people in any way, but the percentage of people, whether it be Black or Hispanic or Asian, who participate in research is relatively small, far smaller than their percentages. So if the percentages of those three ethnicities in the US is whatever, 30%, the percentage of them that participate in general serious disease research is de minimis at like 5%. We try to emphasize it, and I'm always cognizant of it and trying to get full diversity to the extent that I can. And I do think that we're a leader in doing so.
So that raises the obvious question of what are the barriers? I mean, so barriers in general, like obviously people are cynical about what happens to their privacy, their information, their data. If Pfizer finds out that I am a guy with prostate cancer, what happens to me? Is there some, sort of insidious kind of pathway to harm as a consequence of participating in these? And so let's focus on that one, and then we'll get to diversity and minority participation.
Right. So I would emphasize that participation is confidential and anonymous, not just to the sponsoring client, as you alluded to, but to the researchers as well. So the researchers will have no idea who the person is. All they will know is Darryl or Doug called in at 4:30, and they will have a recruitment grid that will say, Doug, 4:30, age 52, diagnosed in 2018, stage 4, started with a chemo combination, moved to, also had HT, et cetera. And there might be some other qualifying questions that might include demographic information, such as ethnicity, household income, education, which are important aspects to getting diversity of sample. But to be clear, no one will know who the participants are. Only I know who the participants are, but the researchers will not know who they are.
So a patient, as I've said in other of our recordings, and I think we're doing like 60 of them for our conference or so, there's a virtual audience behind me, probably a couple of thousand people, and some of them are sort of shouting in the back of my neck saying, I don't believe him. How can I believe him? If I'm supposed to be anonymous, why ask my name in the first place?
Well, I'm only asking your first name, and that's the only thing that's on the grid is your first name. And we play in real research here. That's a serious thing, and the rules of compliance are significant. So in a specific project, I have to take like a 2-hour course just to work on a project. They have that include very detailed compliance, and I have to take a test that I have to pass to work on a project. So yes, it's true that the researchers will not know who the participants are, and they don't want to know. It's not about Darryl or Doug's opinion. It's 20 participants with prostate cancer. They don't care if it's who the specific people are, and they have no interaction with it. The research that we do is generally one-off research. So it's just the one phone call talking about their reaction to an example we used earlier of the patient brochure, or a website, new website, or some advocacy related research, as several examples. But yes, it's true. And I will tell that to the 3,000 people in your ear saying, well, it's not true. There are a lot of people that are skeptical, and it's my role to make them less skeptical. Having said that, at the end of the day, we want people who want to participate in research. And some people want to, and some people don't. And if they don't want to, that's fine too. We don't want those people. We want the people that want to share and want to be engaged and want to share their perspectives as to their condition and treatment. And we really don't try to convince people to participate. There are people that will ask 100 questions, but most people, they understand the dynamic and are accepting of it.
Before we get into diversity and such, what you just said actually raises two interesting questions, at least interesting to me. I hope to the 3,000 sitting behind me. One is the studies have typically 20 people or what have you. I could understand that from a research and investigator management point of view. You're doing 20 hours of interviews. That's actually a lot of data collected and to be analyzed and cleaned, et cetera. But there are also studies that show that 20 people, a group of 20 people compared to a group of 100 people, you could get 180 degrees different kind of analysis from the 100 people than you can from the 20 people. What is it that keeps the studies smaller?
I would say a couple of different things. I don't know that in the example of like prostate cancer research, that 100 people is going to in fact be much different than 20 people, because at a certain point, there's going to be commonality of responses, and you're going to be able to create some type of general summary points after whatever the number is, 10, 20, 30 people. And it's probably not going to change if it goes to 50 or 100, probably not significantly. But to answer your question, so that's that's the primary reason. The second reason is, budget. These research projects are expensive. They run into 6 figures. And if you're going to, add 5 times as many people, that's going to be significant more of the recruiting piece of it. And thirdly, in stage 4, which is the emphasis of what we do, we can't find 100 people to do the calls. There's only a certain number of people that we can call. It would get to participate. I don't know what the maximum necessarily is. Because remember, there's always texture to this research. It's never, we just want people with stage 4 prostate cancer. There's other levels to it. So you have to drill down to that level. And we probably couldn't get 100 people, even if we wanted to participate in the research. So it's a combination of those 3 factors of what limit the number to 20 versus 100. And even in a group of 20, that's probably still going to be a month of, research time from the time we start recruiting to doing all the calls. That doesn't even include the design part of it, which is a month before that. And then the analysis of it, which is several weeks after. So even doing 20 people, we're talking 2 or 3 months of time. To do 100, that's going to be 6 months of time or even more. And there isn't that stomach to create such a long project, but it varies from category to category. There are research in serious diseases. I just got a request for an HIV project yesterday. They wanted 500 people diagnosed in the last 3 years, and that's a quantitative project. So there is quantitative research in serious and rare diseases. But what Find a Cure panel specializes in is more qualitative research, and the numbers are generally smaller. I will occasionally do a qualitative project up to 100 people, but the sweet spot is really 10 to 30. And
you mentioned that you want people that are willing to talk. Obviously willing is, you can't force people. But as I've seen, over 2 decades, there are people who are sort of like professional patients, people who will volunteer for everything in sight, and they have the same message, that they've been carrying for the last 10 or 20 years or whatever, which is fine. It's valid to have a story and a personal point of view. But by, sort of not knowing who these patients are, not knowing that these are people who have a powerful, who powerfully express themselves and participate in things, does that leave out the broader community of patients that are just trying to get on with their lives and not, want to have participation in their cancer as minimal as it needs to be effective?
Well, there's definitely professional survey takers. They're not in disease research in particular, but in consumer research, there's a large population of people in the US and throughout the world that sit around and take surveys all day. And it's not a small population, it's hundreds of thousands of people. Those people are really not actively involved in our research. And most of what we do is very limited as far as who are willing to take. So in prostate cancer, we might only be willing to take people who have been diagnosed in the last 3 years. So someone who's been blessed and been fighting stage 4 for 5 years or 10 years, they're probably not going to qualify for our research. There is an emphasis in serious disease research on more recently diagnosed people. And that term is pretty broad. That might go out to 3 years. So we really don't have the professional people in our projects. It's not a big concern. It is in other categories, but not in what we do, generally speaking.
What do you think keeps minority participation in what seems to be all manner of research and investigation below the percentage, at a lower percentage than the general population you would expect? There's a number. It's an excellent question, and there's a number of different reasons for it. Some of it is technology access, and if they're not on internet actively, then there's a good chance that they're not going to be included, which is too bad. And it's something that needs to be addressed and isn't addressed in a satisfactory way. Secondly, a lot of people in diversity sectors are more conservative in how they want to publicize their lives, and they're not as comfortable sharing in a public way, and they might be more skeptical than other people, and legitimately so, because they feel like this is, part of the infrastructure that they're not that familiar with and not that comfortable with, and don't necessarily want to participate. So, but when I speak to people, it's just getting in front of people, which is the important thing. If I can get in touch with people, I can explain and introduce it to them. And the close rate and acceptance rates of people that I speak to directly is extremely high. And I know that they want to participate too. And going back to the Black Men Prostate Cancer project that we did just last month, all those people were extremely interested in participating. They understand the significance of better education in the Black community of prostate cancer. And this was an opportunity for them to make an impact in their own community. So they're very interested in helping their own community. And I think, we told them going into this research that it was specific to Black men and that they were the only ones participating. And I did use my example that I mentioned before of, I just did a prostate cancer project 3 months ago and there was only one Black participant. So we want you to have an opportunity to step forward here. And it went extremely well. And I'm very glad that I did it. And I want to continue to be very involved and a leader in diversity research, because in the past, I may have said, I can't do it. It's too hard. I don't want to do it. And backed off of it because I don't want to take on any projects that I can't deliver. I mean, part of what we offer at Find a Cure panel is the ability to deliver the projects. But I feel a responsibility because I know I am
really the leading recruiter in serious disease research, that I need to step forward and try to offer solutions in these categories. So I think I'm going to do a melanoma project specifically to Black people, that I felt more confidence coming out of from my prostate cancer project that I could deliver it. And I think I'm going to do that in the next month or so. We've always been a leader from the beginning in all aspects of research. HIV, for example, we were really at the forefront of HIV research. And that goes back maybe 10 years ago. People were reluctant to do HIV research, participate in HIV research. There's still was a big stigma around it. And we tried to encourage people to participate. And we made a number of active steps to get people to participate, and working with, we've worked with, no exaggeration, between 50 and 100 ASOs, AIDS service organizations, because they tend to be very regional. And, we encourage that research, and we try to do that in other sectors as we've, developed as a company.
Yeah, and not to sort of blow smoke up your butt, but you are, as I said before, there are very few companies that I, as like a nonprofit executive or whatever, and as a social worker, and our organization and all my colleagues here, there are very few research organizations, or there are very few industry partners that we feel completely confident in, that like, I don't have to interrogate you when you send me an email that says, can you help me with this study? By the same token, it's regret that, there's just limited in our time and our capacity to actually participate in stuff. But, and that's just, we're...
And I think, we go back a long way, Darryl. I think we've been involved in 5 different projects over the years. And very well that I probably know between 100 and 200 people with stage 4 prostate cancer. That's a lot of people. And in other categories like metastatic breast cancer, I know like 300 or 400 women with metastatic breast cancer, because I've worked in that category many times. Great group of gals. I love working with them. They're very active, very engaged people. And I think what separates us from other companies is, we treat every person like a person. They're not a data point. They're not a statistic. They'll be dealing directly with me. I will handle all aspects of it, from getting their preliminary information, getting them on the call, dealing with the incentives of it. And I think they feel comfortable. They know that they can call me or text me or email me or message me or tweet me, whatever, 24/7. This is not a 9-to-5 business. Active from, morning to all aspects of the night. We're a national company, and this is important work. It's very rewarding. It's very impactful. And I really enjoy doing it. So I feel lucky to be involved in it.
Doug, thank you for taking time to speak with us today.